So I want to throw, we like theories. We have sort of our belief system. So men and women cheat in relationships when they don't feel like they're getting something. It can be intimacy. It can be support. It can be help with the kids. It can be a variety of things. But they don't feel like they're getting something. And so they make horrible decisions and stray, starting emotionally, then physically in relationships. And New England's system is very interesting. So Brady took a pay cut most of his career. And I've noticed this in my career. When I feel I'm getting everything, I am much more willing to cut my bosses a break. And so Brady always felt, I've got the best coach. I always had a top 5 defense. I always have a top offensive line. I always have better than average running backs. I have a great owner. I can take a pay cut because I appreciate the support.
Sure.
Right? And New England does not ask their quarterback to wear a cape. They do not ask their quarterback to throw sidearm or left-handed. Nor do they feel pressure with their quarterbacks to ask them to do that. They don't feel like they have to validate his contract. They don't feel like, hey, we have this super talented guy. We owe him Josh Allen, Mahomes, Herbert. We owe him deep throws. He's too talented, Lamar Jackson. So as I watched Mac Jones, I thought to myself, if you base quarterbacks on how they fit the system and what they're asked to do, I can argue Mac Jones is a top 10 quarterback based on what he's asked to do. And he will probably take a significant pay cut. Because back to my original theory, if you feel boxes are checked in your life, you don't feel like you have to get every penny or every acre of real estate from your employer. And I think it's the secret sauce behind the culture of the Patriots. Nobody's the highest paid because players innately feel we have a better coach, a better defense, better home field, better owner, better plane, better support, and all people are willing in that space to give more.
Counterpoint to that, my friend.
All right.
He threw 3 passes. That's the counterpoint. The counterpoint to all of that brilliance and eloquence is it's the fewest passes thrown in an NFL game in 40 years. Maybe, just maybe, I agree. We don't ask you if you're in New England to throw left-handed. We don't ask you to throw, a deep 60-yard seam route. But we don't trust you to throw 12 passes. You can't give us the Jimmy Garoppolo playoff run where you threw a nice round 8. The idea, let's be fair. Now, do I think Mac Jones will be top paid? No. Because you'd be insane to pay the 17th best quarterback, which is about his ceiling, top money. Come on, Colin. I love you, man. But let's be honest about what we saw last night. It took 6 hours, and Patriot fans wanted to mind meld you into thinking this was Georgia Tech against a service academy, running the ball 55 times and winning 35-3. Josh Allen had 5 separate throws to win the game. As effective as the running game was, they scored 1 touchdown. So why didn't they score more points? Because when you run the ball every single time, your offense is capped. So why did they run the ball every single time? Because for as smart as Mac Jones is and as locked in and, he wouldn't even talk to Peyton Manning the week of. And that was very impressive. Wow. He did, by the way, have time to file 2 separate cringeworthy trademarks the week of. He had time for that, but he couldn't talk to Peyton. Why didn't he throw the ball more? Well, maybe because the coaching staff didn't trust him to, because there were strong winds. Now, luckily for him, it's the first NFL game ever played in wind, Colin. And Buffalo and New England are just known for their perfect conditions. I see this. Can I tell you what I thought last night was about?
What?
I thought last night was about Bill Belichick understanding the job better than anyone in the business, which is Belichick. This is the analogy I used this morning, and I'll use it again here. Belichick coaches every individual game as if right before kickoff, someone kidnapped his family. And they said, we're not giving him back unless you win. So he is not focused on, well, I need to get this guy touches. Well, I want to win this way. Well, what will no. What can I do to win in the moment? Oh, the Ravens playoff game, there's a rule I can exploit that people are going to afterwards call me even more of a cheater. Don't care, need to play this card, we'll play it. Oh, I've got to have Edelman start throwing passes. Been holding on to that all year. Don't care, we'll play that card, need to do it. Last night it was, I think Belichick went into that game saying, if we have 0 turnovers, we win. Now, they had 1 turnover, and because of that, they almost lost. Like, the 1 turnover led to a touchdown, and they almost lost because of it. And I think he said, I trust my running backs not to fumble. I don't trust Mac not to throw a pick. He threw 1 pass for the first 3.5 quarters, and it was 4 yards high. It was an amazing catch by, Jonnu Smith? So I think Belichick went into that game saying, like he does every week, by any means necessary. I think it's his brilliance. I think other coaches want to win, but they also want to win their way. They want to win, and get things rolling for the next week and set things up. Belichick treats each game like it's an end-of-life event. How do I win this game? And then we will move on to the next thing. That's what I thought the brilliance of last night was.
It is interesting that Buffalo's one of those teams that I just – it's hard for me to not like them because it shows you in their wins. Arizona and Buffalo, when they win, it's the Mike Tyson quality. If they sense weakness, they can just end the fight early because they do have units and explosive and dynamic players, and they have a quarterback who, frankly, is kind of a freak. Like, he's just a freak physically. But, it's funny. They were better. Remember, Tyrod Taylor, they made the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor. So the rebuild, they weren't mayhem. They just didn't have the right quarterback. When they got him and they got Brian Daboll to ramp him up, they were pretty good pretty fast. Buffalo's interesting, and I think about this all the time, is that you have to build your team to some degree for your division, your conference, and the weather.
You nailed it. They skipped the step. They built the team to beat Kansas City. They said it this offseason. We don't want to lose to the Chiefs again. We don't want to suffer this pain again. They built a team to beat Kansas City. And by the way, they kicked the shit out of Kansas City when they played them. So well done.
Yeah.
They thought New England wasn't around anymore. And New England's like, okay, have fun beating Kansas City. You won't get to play them.
And also, in Buffalo, they have no running game. Timeout.
I know.
You have to start with a running game in Buffalo. Because this is the brilliance of New England has always been. I tell people this. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the air. When I lived in Connecticut, fences make good neighbors. It's always been a covert, secretive state. New England's culture is perfect for the region. It's built on running the football, short passing. This is with Brady, too. Take the Moss years out. Keeping secrets. A tight culture. Not letting any secrets out. Boston's a very weird city. If you look at the country's television ratings, it's the most provincial market in America. They don't watch anything but Boston sports. New York City will watch the Rose Bowl with a Pac-12 Big Ten team. It gets a 10 rating every year. Ohio State plays USC. Doesn't matter. Boston watches nothing. Providence watches nothing outside of the region. So the culture in that region is private and covert and academic, and that's exactly what New England is. It's almost like they said, what's going to work? Like, by the way, you can tell the Rams. The Rams are like, we're going to throw the ball down the field.
Fun, yes.
Fun, flash. We're
Big
going to
names,
attract star players. So that's what we're going to build a very high volume team. Buffalo plays in the worst weather in the league and is like, we're going to throw the ball deep a lot and have no running game. It's like timeout, the opposite of what you should be.
And I get it. You have this, Josh Allen's a freak athlete. I understand that. What I didn't understand, by the way, speaking of running the ball, I didn't understand Monday night why they didn't let Josh Allen run the ball more. Like, if it's bad weather, that's how you should have been running the ball.
Yes.
The quarterback who's going to be, the biggest guy on the field a lot of the time, aside from D linemen who can't catch him. I thought that was a mistake by Dable. I thought you can run the ball a lot with Josh Allen, particularly when they got in the red zone. When you had first and goal from the 10, if you have 4 straight Josh Allen RPOs, I don't know. It just felt to me like that they left some meat on the bone there. But I do think that it is fascinating that Buffalo, they prepared, and they said after they lost to the Chiefs, they were on the record about they're building a team to give the city problems. So they're building nickel and dime defenses out, right? Because the Chiefs aren't going to bloody your nose and run the football. They are adding even more weapons to the outside. They're going to bring a tight end involved who can catch passes, because we're going to need to score 35 points to beat Kansas City. And the Patriots are just sitting there like, guys, you got to win your division first in this league. It's not the NBA. That winning your division is hugely important, or else you're on the road the whole time. And we are building a bully. And I do think one thing Belichick's as the GM, Colin, it's a very mixed bag, because the drafting at certain positions has been awful. At certain spots, it's been good. You can't gloss over the fact that, Gronk and Hernandez, those were great picks, despite what happened with Hernandez. But it's also true that they haven't signed a lot of it's a mixed bag. But where Belichick's been great at is understanding the ebbs and flows of the league. And understanding what in the NBA it'd be called, because everyone thinks they're so smart, a market inefficiency. Belichick, I don't know if he views it in those terms. It's like, in the early 2000s, when the passing revolution is really starting to take hold, what if I have 2 tight ends and I can still engage in the passing, but because they're big, strong tight ends, if everyone's going to, play me like they're wide receivers, I'll just run the ball. And now this year, it's like, okay, the whole league is just worried about passing. Nobody plays a base defense. Nobody has a big nose tackle. Nobody has big linebackers anymore. All right, well, I'm going to have a rookie quarterback who's going to be somewhat limited. What if I just try to have a big, strong, physical football team that in the long term, I don't think works year over year. But right now, when no one has the personnel for it, because nobody's looking for these big thumping linebackers, you probably can get better versions of those than if you're the 11th team trying to find a nickel corner in free agency. Well, somebody's getting the 11th best nickel corner. If you're the only guy who's like, I want the best fullback out there, you're going to get the best fullback. I think Belichick's really smart at seeing the direction the league's going and going the other way at times when all of a sudden it allows him to have a competitive edge.
Let me give you a Belichick-Saban theory. So smart people can spot other smart people, because smart people see body language. Verbally, they can spot people. If you converse with people, you can spot pretty quickly. Nick, you're a bright guy. You can spot
who's smart, who's
bright
who
people.
Gets who doesn't.
So Saban and Belichick are both brilliant at spotting young coaching talent. Mangini, Josh McDaniel, Matt Patricia, Brian Flores. Saban's replaced 7 offensive coordinators. He's yet to miss on any of them. And he's a defensive coach. So they're great. Go back to Belichick's staff that included Kirk Ferentz, Pat Hill, Mangini, Nick Saban. They're both great hires because they're highly educated guys. But one of the things you can't share is intelligence, unless you have a genetic connection. So both lose assistants, and the hit rate on success is 30%. Because of the many things, both can spot smart, but you can't elevate people beyond a certain level.
Correct.
Even if they have the proximity around you for years. And so I think it's fascinating. Both have rarely missed. I couldn't tell you the last miss for Saban or Belichick on a hire. He's turned his son into a good coach. but yet both hit about 30% on the coach leaving and succeeding. And my theory is you can't pass on intelligence. At some point, a college or pro coach is making 20 decisions a day. A smart guy gets 18 right. A less smart guy gets 12. And over the course of a month or a year, it just unravels quickly.
Well, I can't speak to what's happened with Saban's guys just because I'm not as, in the weeds on college football as you are. But what has clearly happened with Belichick's guys, a lot of them is, and I'll use this is an analogy I've used elsewhere. It's a little awkward to use to you because it's about you, but you maybe have heard me say this before, but it's a similar thing that happened in sports radio in the mid 2000s to the early 2010s, which is, Colin, you couldn't drive cross country and listen to local talk radio and not hear some 26-year-old who was, getting his starter, is on a show in a mid-market, be like, I'm going to tell you why last night's Bills-Patriots game was like a bad divorce. And it's like, oh, I know what bit you're trying to do. You're trying to do what you think Cowherd would be doing, but you're not Cowherd and you've never been divorced. So it's probably not going to work, buddy. You've never even been married. So a lot of people tried in our industry to do what you did because you had such success. It was so unique. They're like, well, I can do that, but you can't. The same thing happened with Belichick's assistants. They're like, well, Bill does it this way. He is the best success in the world. Why don't I follow that exact blueprint? And I think the miss on that is Bill did it. What Bill's, in addition to all the natural brilliance, Bill was always being authentic to himself. And that's who he is. Who he is this kind of gruff, oddly funny, introspective, if you ask him the right question, very droll guy. But other folks, and, Coach Mangini is one of I adore him. I think he would tell you one of his mistakes was with the Jets, when it came to the media, he just tried to do what Bill would do. But that's not who Coach Mangini is. And it's, you know what I mean? It got him off to the wrong foot with the media, all these things. Mangini's a funny, I think he's a far nicer guy than Belichick, all these things. But you were trying to follow someone else's path instead of your own. Instead of just taking, to torture the analogy a bit further, the things that people, in our business, what you can take from Colin who trying to do radio is that, your show starts at 9, you're still in the office at 6. You do it like fake show before the show in the meeting, like the prep, the still loving sports, those things you can take, and then you put your own character on it. When I see like what's happening with the Giants, it's like, Joe Judge, buddy, you've seen 6 Belichick disciples try to do exactly this. And it's worked for here's one who is being true to himself. Flores. Flores does not try to be Belichick. Flores clearly took some things from him, but I've never seen a Brian Flores press conference or anything. Brian Flores, I'm like, oh, same thing Bill O'Brien did, the same thing Charlie Weiss did, same thing all these guys do, where they try to be Bill. He's not, and I think he's successful because of it.